James Wade built his entire identity around the word machine and spent 20 years hiding what was actually happening inside. 11 PDC major titles, 4 World Championship semi-finals, a number 2 world ranking, all of it achieved while carrying a condition that once had him checked into a psychiatric clinic on suicide watch, while the rest of the tour turned their backs on him, and while his own mind was working against him every single time he walked to the ockey. By the end of this video, the name The Machine will mean something completely different to you. James Martin Wade was born on the 6th of April 1983 in Ash, Surrey, and grew up in Aldershot, Hampshire. Aldershot is a military town, disciplined and tough, and not a place that encourages anyone to talk openly about how they feel inside. Darts arrived in Wade's life at age 14, and within 3 years he was representing England at youth level, winning the World Development Federation Europe Cup youth titles across 3 categories: youth overall, youth pairs and youth teams, all in the year 2000 at 17 years old. That kind of early dominance suggested a future at the top of the sport, and it arrived quickly, but what was already developing alongside his talent would take years to fully surface. Wade has put it plainly: "I always knew from even when I was 11 or 12 years old that I was different. I had a very different outlook on life to other kids, and I remember even asking my mum and dad if I was disabled mentally. No diagnosis, no explanation. Just a boy in a military town who knew something about his brain was not the same as everyone else's, and who did what Aldershot teaches you to do, got on with it." Professional darts began with the BDO in 2001 at age 18, followed by a World Championship debut at Lakeside in 2003, where he lost in round 1 to Dennis Harbour, despite holding 8 darts at a double to win the match. A switch to the PDC followed in May 2004, and by 2006 he had left his job as a mechanic to go full-time on the tour. That same year, Wade hit 3 tournament 9-dart finishes, the first player in history to manage that in a single calendar year, and he walked away with the PDC Young Player of the Year award at 23 years old. Something special was taking shape, and underneath it, something dangerous was building. 5 nicknames came and went before the right one appeared, and that history matters more than most people realize. Wade was called the Gladiator, then 009, a reference to his 9-dart ability, then Spectacular because he wears glasses. The Wingman followed briefly, a name he abandoned because he disliked, in his own words, the insinuations the name led to. At one point, the TV graphics simply left the space blank. The Machine was Wade's own idea, chosen for his Premier League debut in January 2008, and it carried a double meaning from the start, a nod to his former life as a mechanic and a description of his playing style: precise, methodical, relentless, clinical. The name stuck and the brand was built on it: cold, reliable, unflappable. None of that matched what was happening in his head. Behind the facade was a man with wild mood swings, emotional crashes, and days where he no longer wanted to be alive, and he would later say it in the plainest terms possible. "It's never been my ability or down to my throw. It's always down to how I feel and what space I'm in." A machine does not say that, a man at war with himself does, and for years, nobody in professional darts understood the full scale of that war. Between 2007 and 2010, Wade was arguably the best darts player alive who was not named Phil Taylor. The 2007 World Match Play and World Grand Prix put him on the map at 24, and the PDC named him Player of the Year. 3 more major finals followed in 2008. The UK Open went his way, and in 2009 he lifted the Premier League. By 2010, his world ranking had climbed to number 2, the highest position on the tour below Taylor himself, and 8 major PDC titles sat in the record books. Wade has been direct about what that period extracted from him. Before it all came to a head, in 2007 and 2008, I was probably the best player in the world for those 2 years consistently. I think that darts really pushed me over the edge in my problems. It has given me so much, but it has taken just as much as it has given me. The pressure of performing at that level, the recognition, the money, the expectation. Wade believes all of it accelerated what was already happening in his mind. A psychiatrist was already involved before any formal diagnosis arrived, though the medication being prescribed was making things worse rather than better, and Wade later described it as being made to bounce off the walls 1 minute or walk on stage like a zombie the next. The crowds booed him. Other players found him difficult. His moods were unpredictable in ways that went unexplained. And then, in November 2010, the underlying reality became visible to everyone watching at home. The 2010 Grand Slam of Darts final, played in Wolverhampton, produced one of the most staggering collapses professional darts has ever witnessed. Wade led BDO player Scott Waite by 8 sets to 0, 8-0 in a televised final against an opponent who had never played a PDC crowd of that size, and then proceeded to lose the match 16 sets to 12. Commentary at the time reached for nerves, for pressure, for the cruelty of sport. What nobody knew, because Wade did not yet fully understand it himself, was that Wolverhampton was not a failure of nerve. Within 5 weeks of that final, he was admitted to the Priory clinic, and the collapse began to look less like a sporting mystery and more like a symptom. January 2011, Alexandra Palace, the World Championship. Wade won his first round match and later admitted he had no memory of how. Mensur Suljovic, ranked 47th in the world, beat him in round 2, and the number 2 seed walked away grateful to be out of it. Don't ask me how I won my first round match because I haven't got a clue, and when Suljovic beat me, I was glad to be out of it, he said. My mind was all over the place. What followed that defeat needs to be heard in his exact words. I didn't care about darts anymore. I knew there was something wrong because I wanted to go to sleep, have a heart attack, and not wake up. The next day, his father Martin drove him to the Priory clinic. Wade has described that car journey since, and the moment that stays with you is the 4 words his father said: "I just want my son back." Suicide Amber Watch began immediately upon admission, and Wade has since described the environment in clinical detail. There are no glass mirrors, no radiators, and no curtain strings or anything remotely you could use to hang or kill yourself. When staff asked him directly whether he wanted to end his life, his answer was, "Yes, I'd like to, but I don't think I've got the bottle to go through with it." Approximately 1 month later, Wade emerged with 3 formal diagnoses: bipolar disorder, clinical depression, and ADHD. His verdict on the experience was unambiguous. Going there was probably the best thing I have ever done. Pausing here to understand what this diagnosis means in the specific context of professional darts is worth doing, because darts is a sport played entirely in the mind. Physical fitness does not determine the outcome. Fatigue does not swing a match in the usual sporting sense. Every variable that separates a winner from a loser on any given night originates in the player's mental state at that moment, and for a man with bipolar disorder, that is not merely a challenge, it is the entire game. Wade has described the condition in terms anyone can picture. Some days I'm on cloud 9, the happiest place I could be, everything seems perfect. Then in the next few hours I can just turn and not want to live or get out of bed. Apply that reality to a sport where the target is the size of a thumbnail, where television cameras sit in your face every 30 seconds, where a crowd of thousands watches every single dart leave your hand, and where a match can last 2 hours without a break in concentration. Apply it to that, and the scale of what Wade was managing becomes clearer. "I can be on stage and not interested," he put it. "I can be before the game and not interested. If my mind isn't there, there's nothing I can do about it." And that is where the famous collapses begin to make a different kind of sense. The Grand Slam final in Wolverhampton, lost from 8 sets ahead. The 2012 World Championship semi-final against Adrian Lewis, where Wade led 5 sets to 1, held a dart at double 18 to go 6-2 up, missed it, and never won another set. Lewis took 5 straight to close out the match, not a loss of nerve, a mind that had somewhere else to be. When Wade returned to the professional tour after the Priory became public knowledge, the reception from his colleagues told you everything about the culture surrounding mental health in darts at that time. "The first time I came back to a tournament after visiting the Priory," he said, "pretty much every player, apart from Colin Lloyd and Andy Jenkins, turned their backs on me." 2 players. Out of an entire professional tour, Colin Lloyd and Andy Jenkins and nobody else. Some of Wade's colleagues went further than silence and actively taunted him, which led to a tabloid headline at the time reading, "Bonkers." Some players were taunting me because I had a spell in the Priory. Wade's response arrived in the form of a walk-on music change. Dizzy Rascal's Bonkers became his entry song, a piece of public defiance that told the tour exactly what he thought of their reaction. "I mess up on TV and interviews and have been out of control," he acknowledged later, "and there is very little forgiveness from the people I work around." One detail from this period reframes a significant portion of his televised moments across his career. Wade has said, "Everyone has been told not to interview me immediately after I've played. People have been warned about what could happen, and when it does, everyone is surprised. a professional sporting environment where a man's medical condition was known to producers and broadcasters, and yet the cameras kept going in front of him the moment a match ended with the same surprised reaction every time. Lithium became Wade's primary medication following his diagnosis, a mood stabilizer that he has credited with making daily life manageable, and the Daily Telegraph captured the relationship between his career and his treatment in a line that has since been quoted widely. Tungsten may have brought James Wade fame, but it is lithium that brought him peace. Resistance came first, as it often does. For the first week, I said, "Stick your tablets, I don't need this," Wade recalled. Then I realized the more I took the tablets, the less I upset or hurt people. Life became more simple and manageable, and my head was not going at 1,000,000 miles an hour. A DHD medication also formed part of his treatment, requiring a therapeutic use exemption under anti-doping rules, an annual process Wade described as intrusive and distressing, involving repeated assessments by different psychiatrists each time, and he stopped taking that medication in 2022, partly because of what that annual process demanded of him. And then comes the part of this story that says the most about the environment Wade has spent his career navigating. In April 2015, fellow Premier League darts players allegedly claimed that Wade's mental health medication was giving him an unfair competitive advantage. A man admitted to a psychiatric clinic on suicide watch. A man taking lithium to keep his mood stable enough to function. And his colleagues were apparently arguing that his prescribed medication was cheating. PDC chairman Barry Hearn publicly shut the conversation down. If it's not on the IOC banned list, there is nothing wrong at all. But the fact that the conversation happened at all tells you something about the world Wade has worked inside for his entire professional life. October 2012, the World Grand Prix in Dublin. Wade played Colin Osborne in the first round, and the cameras caught him visibly unsettled on stage throughout the match. When it ended, he flew immediately back to the UK for treatment, and on the 11th of October 2012, the PDC issued an official statement confirming publicly for the first time that Wade had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, clinical depression, and ADHD during his Priory stay in 2010. Wade's own statement was brief. "I am home now and getting the right help so I can focus on getting myself right." He did not play again until the Grand Slam of darts. 2 years after that, in 2014, the PDC left Wade out of the Premier League, framing the decision as rest needed for his treatment, and that is where it became more complicated. Wade publicly rejected the framing entirely. "I did not ask to be left out of the 2014 Premier League, nor did I decline an invitation. No medical professional has suggested I take a break either." Whatever the intention behind that decision, Wade experienced it publicly as something done to him rather than for him. A man who had spent 7 years as one of the best players on the tour, now having his participation managed in ways he had not requested. He kept playing anyway, because the same mind that crashes can also elevate, and Wade has described that side of the condition with the same candor he brings to everything else. "I have had breakdowns, I have knocked my house down, I have bought fancy cars, all in search of happiness and a perfect life. You could take me to the moon and I would try to buy it, but that's part of my disorder." June 2011, just months after the Priory stay had become public knowledge, Wade won the UK Open, his 7th major title, and the crowds that had booed him for years were noticeably supportive for the first time. Something in the reception was shifting, slowly, but in the right direction. The 2014 Masters final against Mervyn King produced what many consider the greatest comeback in darts history. King led 9 sets to 2 and held 8 match darts, which in any straightforward reading of a darts match means it is over, and yet Wade won 9 of the final 10 legs, finishing the deciding set with a 135 checkout to take the match 11-10. PDC televised performance of the year followed, and it deserved to. A 4-year gap in major victories closed in 2018 when Wade won the European Championship and the World Series finals, his 9th and 10th majors, at 35 years old, proving the interruption had not ended what he was capable of producing. Then 2021 brought the 11th major, a 3rd UK Open title, and with it a distinction no other player outside Phil Taylor has ever achieved. Major PDC titles won across 3 separate decades, the 2000s, the 2010s, and the 2020s. 37 years old, 2 decades of battling his own mind, still producing at the top of the sport. The 2019 World Championship second round between Wade and Japanese qualifier Seigo Asada ended with Wade screaming in his opponent's face during the match, and afterwards telling Sky Sports, "I kept giving it to him. I wanted to hurt him. I wanted to really hurt him in his face." A £5,000 fine followed. Former player Wayne Mardle called the behaviour thuggish, and online the word racist appeared alongside bully and worse. Wade later attributed what happened to a hypomania episode, a manic episode directly connected to his bipolar disorder, and that context does not erase the impact on Asada or remove the legitimacy of the criticism, but it does add a dimension that almost nobody engaged with at the time. The pattern across Wade's career of explosive post-match moments, the raw anger in certain interviews, the incidents that followed across 2025, these are not personality defects operating independently of everything else. Wade himself has framed it as clearly as he can. "I can say things in interviews or to people which I don't even mean sometimes. I just get a rush of anger, then 10 minutes later I think, oh no, what have I said?" At 41, his honesty about this has not softened into comfort. "Even with the diagnosis, I still don't know how to manage myself emotionally, but I am what I am, and I don't think I'm going to change now." That is not a man making excuses. That is a man being honest in a sport that has rarely rewarded honesty of that kind. May 2022. The European Darts Open in Leverkusen, Germany. Wade reached the semi-finals, collapsed before the match, and paramedics were called. Racing heart, high blood pressure, nausea, dizziness. 3 nights in a Leverkusen hospital followed, and he could not fly home immediately, missing the next Premier League night entirely. His wife Samantha spoke publicly at the time. "It was very worrying Sunday into Monday night, and it is horrible to think of James there by himself when he has been so poorly." Another health scare arrived in 2024, one he left unchecked for months before finally receiving the all-clear, and he acknowledged that the anxiety of not knowing had compounded everything else he was already managing. Samantha, who married Wade in August 2015 and now serves as his manager, is by his own account essential to the stability that keeps him functional. "If I was left on my own, with my bank account, no tablets, and without Samantha," he has said, "I would bankrupt myself within the week." She was a PDC walk-on girl when they met in 2013, and the 2 sons they have since had together brought a new dimension to the story that Wade opened up about publicly in 2025. Arthur Wade was born on the 8th of October 2018, and in 2025 his father revealed that the boy was being assessed for ADHD and had been pulled out of school because of behavioral outbursts. "It's heartbreaking," Wade admitted. "We've had to pull him out of school because he's having outbursts. It's my fault. He's got it from me." And then in the same breath, "When Arthur was first born, I thought he'd evade my amazing gift, but unfortunately, he's inherited it all." Amazing gift. Not a curse, not a tragedy, but a gift that carries a cost, and that reframing connects directly to what Wade has been doing in public life since 2016, when he became an ambassador for Bipolar UK. The charity's logo appears on his darts shirts. 501 miles were covered in a £501 Ford Focus, driven from Scotland to London with 9 tyre dealer stops along the way, a 9-dart finish of stops to raise money for the organisation. Charity dinners attended by other professional players followed, including Michael Smith and Gerwyn Price in August 2025, 2 of the sport's biggest names showing up for a man the tour once collectively turned its back on. The work carries urgency that comes from experience. Bipolar UK is probably one of the worst funded charities, Wade has said. They get nothing, which is disgusting. And then, the last thing you want is someone ending their life because they're having a bad day with their illness, and that happens far too often. Those words coming from a man who was himself on suicide watch is not an abstract advocacy position. It is a reason. 42 years old in 2025, and James Wade reached the UK Open final, the World Matchplay final, his 7th, a record across the entire tour, leading Luke Littler 5-0 in that matchplay final before losing 13-18, re-entering the world top 5, posting a career best average of 115.92, winning Players' Championship 19, and becoming the first player in history to have beaten every PDC World Champion on television, completing that set with a victory over Littler at the European Championship. Into 2026, Players' Championship 1 fell his way. Michael van Gerwen beaten in the semi-final. Nathan Aspinall beaten 8-6 in the final. The Premier League invitation never came, and Wade said publicly that being left out knocked his confidence given his bipolar. 4 consecutive second-round exits at the World Championship now sit in the record books. A world title has never arrived, and the darts world refers to him, without much argument, as the greatest player never to win it. "I believe there are not many people with what I have that could do what I have done," he said in 2022. "It has been challenging, and then quieter. It's a miracle what I've achieved, really. It's not just about how good I am, it's about the day I'm having." The machine, precise, mechanical, cold, that was the public version, built deliberately by a man who chose the nickname himself, who selected it for his Premier League debut at 24 years old, and who committed to it fully because that was the identity he needed other people to see. What was actually powering it was a man diagnosed with bipolar disorder, clinical depression, and ADHD, who was placed on suicide watch at the Priory, who returned to work and found that nearly every colleague on the tour had decided to look the other way, whose prescribed medication was called an unfair advantage by the people he competed against, who watched his own condition appear in his eldest son, and who, despite the weight of all of it, is still walking out to the ockey at 42 and reaching major finals. The nickname was not a description of who he was. It was a decision about who he was going to be on the days when being anything at all took everything he had. Wade framed it himself. "If I have done what I have done, with what I have got, anyone can. Just because you have got any kind of physical or mental illness, if it is the right thing for you, it doesn't stop you from doing things." That is James Wade.